champs! Today we're going to be talking about circles. You know that perfect round shape you see in wheels, in cakes, and even in your mom's favorite earrings? Yes, circles. But today we're going to be diving even deeper. We're going to be exploring how much space it covers and how far around it goes. Are you ready to be a circle champion? All right, let's go. All right, so whenever you see a shape, whatever the shape is, there are two parts of the shape that we can ideally measure. You can measure the distance around that shape, or you can measure how much space that shape covers. For example, take a look at this circle. If I were to measure how far around this line goes, starting from this point, going all the way around to this point, I have just measured the distance around the circle. And that is in other shapes called perimeter, but in circle, it is called the circumference of the circle. Now, if I were to measure how much space the circle covers, the entire space inside this circle, I would be measuring the area of the circle. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to measure both the circumference and the area of any circle that you get, no matter how big or how small it is. Now, when solving the area or the circumference of a circle, there are three important things that you need to know. The first thing is the diameter. The diameter is a line that runs from one end of the circle to another end of the circle, passing through the middle or the center of the circle. For example, if the line runs from this point to this point, it is not a diameter because it didn't pass through the center of the circle. Now, your diameter is a line that goes from one end of a circle to another end of the circle, going through or going across the center of your circle. Now, radius is the second thing that we need to know. What is a radius? The radius is a line that runs from the center of the circle to any part of the circle. So it goes from the center of the circle to that point of the circle. I could draw another one coming from the center of the circle down here, and it would still be the radius, as long as it starts from the center of the circle and it ends at any point around the circle. It is the radius. Now, there's something that's also very important to note. The radius is always half of the diameter. That means 2 radii would give you a diameter. The plural of radius is radii. 2 radii will give you 1 diameter. And so, diameter is equal to 2 times the radius. Now, the third thing that is important to know before you solve circumference or area of a circle is what we call pi. Pi is a very beautiful shape in math, usually represented by that sign. And pi generally has 2 values. You can take pi to be either 22 over 7, that's the first one, or 3.14. These are the 2 values generally used to represent pi. So now that we know the diameter, we understand the radius, and we know the values that we can use for pi, it is time for us to explore the formula for finding the circumference of the circle. Remember, the circumference is the total distance around the circle, all right? Circumference is equal to 2 pi r. That means 2 times your pi times your radius, or pi d. So you either do 2 times pi times your radius or pi times your diameter, which is also twice your radius, right? Okay, so now let's look at the first question. The first question says, find the circumference of a circle with radius 7 centimeters. We're going to be taking 22/7 as our value for pi. So now let's put that into the equation. Let's use the first formula that says 2 pi r. So 2 times pi, which is 22/7, times our radius in the first question, which is 7. So this is the way to express the first question. Now remember, whenever you're solving a multiplication problem that has to do with fraction, it's always best to reduce before you multiply. So let's reduce this. This 7 will go in 7 one time. It will also go in this 7 one time. So let's look. Is there any other way we can reduce this? No. So now we can multiply. 2 times 22 is 44/1, which is equal to 44 centimeters. Now this is the circumference for number 1. Now what if we were going to use pi d, you might ask? Let's try it. Pi d is pi, which is 22/7, times. Now look at this circle. We were given the radius as 7. What do you think the diameter would be? Remember I told you, 2 times your radius would give you your diameter, meaning that your radius is half of your diameter. So if 7 is half of the diameter, that means our diameter is going to be 7 times 2, which is 14/1. Now we're using the second one, which is pi d. 7 will go here 1 time, 7 will go in 14 2 times. I'm going to end up with 44/1, which is equal to 44 centimeters. So whether I use 2 pi r or I use pi d to find the circumference of the circle, as long as I do it correctly, I will end up with the exact same answer. Now let's look at the second question. Now if you notice, in the second question, we are not given the radius of that circle, but we are told the diameter of the circle. We are told that the diameter of that circle is 20 centimeters. Now, if my diameter is 20 centimeters, that means my radius, which is half of my diameter, is going to be 10 centimeters. Now let's plug that back into the formula. So we're starting with 2 pi r. 2 times pi, 22/7, times our radius, which is 10, is equal to, now let's work this out. Let's look at it for a second. Is there a way to reduce this multiplication problem? There isn't, because there's really no number that can divide a number on the top and a number on the bottom. So we just multiply. 2 times 22 is 44. 44 times 10 is 440/7. Now we have arrived at 440/7. And you might ask yourself, what do I do next? Because it kind of looks like we're stuck, right? No. Remember our topic on long division? If you haven't explored long division, please go back to the previous video to look at long division. I did a previous video breaking it down beautifully. Now we're going to use long division to work this out to at least 2 decimal places. Now let's go. 440 divided by 7. 7 will go in 44. 7 cannot go in 4, so we have to use 44. 7 will go in 44 6 times. 7 times 6 is 42. Do your subtraction. I will end up with 2. The next number I'm going to bring down is my 0. Now I have 20. 20 divided by 7 is 2. 7 times 2 is 14. Do my subtraction. I will end up with 6. Now, the number I have left at the bottom is 6. But it is smaller than my divisor. So at this point, remember, I put my decimal point. And that decimal point allows me to add a 0 to my remainder, to keep adding zeros to my remainder until I've worked it out to at least 2 decimal places or until I'm done. So we're going to add a 0 there. Now let's look at this. How many times is 7 going to go in 60? 7 is going to go in 60 8 times. 7 times 8 is 56. So I put my 56. 60 take away 56 is 4. Now remember that decimal point, it allows me to add another 0 here. So this is 40. Now I'm going to repeat the division again. Now 40 divided by 7. 7 is going to go in 40 5 times. 7 times 5 is 35. Do my subtraction, I'm going to end up with 5. Now I've worked it out to 2 decimal places. My answer is going to be 62.85 centimeters. Now that is my circumference. Now let's try it using pi d, which is pi times diameter. Now remember, we're given the diameter as 20 centimeters. So pi, 22 over 7, times 20 over 1. Now, by the time we do this multiplication, we're not able to reduce because we have 7 at the bottom and 20 at the top there and 22 at the top there. There's no number that can divide a number on top and a number at the bottom. So we multiply. 20 times 22 is 440 over 7. The exact same thing. So we're going to go through this process again and we're going to arrive at 62.85 centimeters as the diameter. Sorry, as the circumference. So this is the answer to question 2. Now we're going to do one more circumference question before we move to area. All right? So let's look at the third question. The third question says, a circular field has a radius of 35 centimeters. Find the circumference. A circular field has a radius of 35 centimeters. Find the circumference. Now, if we're to find the circumference of that circle, let's use the formula 2 pi r. Remember, the formula for finding the circumference of a circle is either 2 pi r or pi d. So, using 2 pi r, let's work out the third question using a radius of 35 centimeters. So, 2 times pi times radius 35. Now let's see, can we reduce this? Yes, we can. 7 will go here 1 time, 7 will go in 35 5 times. Now let's multiply. 2 times 22 is 44. 44 times 5 is 220 centimeters. Now that's using 2 pi r. Now let's use pi. Let's use the second one, which is pi d. Pi times your diameter. Remember, if your radius is 35, what do you think your diameter would be? Your diameter is definitely 2 times your radius. So 2 times 35 is 70 over 1. Now let's reduce. 7 will go here 1 time, 7 will go in 70 10 times. 10 times 22 is 220 centimeters. And that's how you find the circumference of a circle. Whether you use the formula 2 pi r or pi d, as long as you do it correctly, you should arrive at the same answer. Now let's learn how to calculate the area of a circle. Now remember what I told you. When you're working with a circle, the total distance around the circle is called the circumference. Now that we're talking about the area, we're trying to calculate how much space the circle covers. That's the total space that shape occupies. That is the area. Now, the area of your circle, to find the area of a circle, you use the formula pi r squared. And remember, pi has 2 values, 22 over 7 or 3.14. You can be asked to use either one of them. But if you are not asked to use either one of them and you can choose one, I always go with 22 over 7 because it's easier to work with. I consider it easier to work with than 3.14. Now let's look at this. Pi r squared. We have a question here. We're to find the area of a circle with a radius of 3.5 centimeters. Now what does pi r squared mean? Pi r squared means pi r squared. It means that you double the radius and you multiply it by pi. Now let's look at this. Can I reduce this? I think so. 7 will go in 7 1 time. 7 will go in 3.5, 0.5 times. Now let's multiply. We can no longer reduce, so it's time to multiply. 22 times 0.5 is 11. 11 times 3.5 is 38.5 centimeters. Now it is important to note that I am working with area, and whenever you're working with area, this 3.5 has a centimeter, and this 3.5 also has centimeters. Basically, I'm multiplying 2 centimeter measurements together. And because you are multiplying 2 together, your answer must have squared. So your area answer is never complete until you have that squared. So remember, you're multiplying two either centimeters or meters or feet, but you're multiplying both of them together. So your answer must be either in centimeters squared, in feet squared, or in inches squared. Squared shows that you just solved an area problem. Now let's look at number 2. Number 2 question says, find the area of a circle that has a diameter of 28 centimeters. Now it's important to note that what we've been given is diameter as 28 centimeters. But I'm not using diameter to solve for area. Remember, area is pi r squared. So I need to find the radius. If you're given the diameter and you need the radius, all you need to do is divide the diameter by 2, because half of your diameter is your radius. So my radius, when I divide 28 by 2, is 14 centimeters. Now let's plug this into this formula to find the area for number 2 question. Pi r squared. Can I reduce? Yes, I can. 7 will go here 1 time, 7 will go in 14 2 times. Now it's time to multiply. 22 times 2 is 44, and 44 times 14 is 616 centimeters. But I'm forgetting something. Remember, when you're solving an area problem, you must make sure that your answer has squared in it. Because this 14 is a centimeter measurement. This 14 is also a centimeter measurement. Centimeter times centimeter is equal to centimeters squared. So my answer is 616 centimeters squared. Now let's look at the third question, number 3. Number 3 says a bicycle wheel has a radius of 21 centimeters. That means the radius is 21 centimeters. Now let's plug that into the formula. Pi r squared. Can I reduce? Yes, I can. 7 will go here 1 time. 7 will go in 21 3 times. Now it is time to multiply. 22 times 3 is 66. 66 times 21 is 1,386 centimeters. Yes, yes, yes. Squared. Fantastic. Now that is the area for the third circle. And really, that's how you solve area and circumference of a circle. I hope you learned something.
I am learning with I Am Learning Hub.